If we could find our seats, I'd like to start the special meeting. Right, okay. Okay, I would like to call to order the Oregon City Council special meeting tonight for Monday, March 17th of 2025. The time is 6:47. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This is a special meeting and attendance is required. Please note that we'll take a roll call of council that are here.
Mrs. Ackerman?
Here.
Mr. Drake? Mr. Horniak?
Here.
Mrs. Puloff?
Here.
Mr. Reeves?
Here.
Mr. Slander?
Here.
Mr. Wollenzak?
Here.
Thank you, Ms. Rawson. Please note that Mr. Drake did contact me that he would not be at tonight's meeting, so may I seek a motion to?
You don't need to do it at a special meeting. There's no requirement for that.
Oh, I was told there was, but. Mr. Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Wollenzak, second by Mr. Horniak. Council, any objections? Hearing none, Mr. Drake is excused from tonight's meeting. Also, tonight's meeting is Mayor Michael Safarian, City Administrator Joel Major, Clerk of Council Cassie Rawson and Josette Snyder, Public Service Director Paul Roman, Chief of Police Brandon Began, Assistant Chief of Police Ryan Spangler, our Fire Chief Clayton O'Brien, our Finance Director Nick Roman, and Building and Zoning Commissioner Stephen Shrake. The first item on the agenda for consideration and passage is item number 48 of 2025, previously presented by Mayor Safarian and City Administrator Mr. Major. Mr. Major, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this ordinance would allow us to enter into an agreement with the Oregon Jerusalem Historical Society. As you are aware, we did write a grant for them. The city could not be the grant recipient, so we wrote it for them. They had to be the grant recipient as a part of this grant program through the land bank. So as such, we would want to enter into this agreement, but we do have 3 council members that are here, that are present today, that are unable to vote on this. So, and 1 is absent. So we would request that this ordinance be pulled, but I wanted to make a note that we are looking into addressing this administratively, since we do see that a reimbursement, we'll be seeking reimbursement from the Historical Society. But the emergency, as you know, if, let's say, to give an example, Mr. Roman has, if there's an issue at the water plant, and it's an emergency, and it's over $25,000, there is an emergency authorization administratively that can be made to expend funds to address the emergency. What we're gonna look into is doing something administratively, because we'll be at risk of losing the funding. And also, this is a brownfield site. There is an environmental cleanup portion of this, and it is a vacant building that does pose safety risk. So we're going to research this to see if we can address this administratively, and then come back to City Council for approval, just so everybody's aware ahead of time. But that's something we're going to research, but we'll request that this be pulled, and then we'll present it at the next meeting. Hopefully, we'll have the 4 members that can vote on this present.
Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Salander.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a question, something I've been pondering. Have we ever looked at, or is there a way that we could look at, or something to see if we could have something where people can remote vote if they are unable to be here, geographically, but are able to watch and vote? Is that something we could?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
and Mr. Salander, we did check into that before, and that is not possible.
Okay.
They did allow it during the COVID deal through the state, but that was a special exception.
Yeah,
And
that's what I was wondering.
that's why we could do it via, what do we call those meetings?
Zoom.
Zoom
Yeah, Zoom.
meetings.
Yeah.
But they, after that, they did not permit it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salander.
Mr. President,
Mr. Horniak.
question for the administration. I'd asked this a couple of meetings ago. With this as an emergency measure, can it still pass with just 4 if we have 3 that have to recuse themselves? Can it pass with just 4, or does it need 5?
No.
So at this point, Mr. President, at this time, it can't pass as an emergency, so we would have to remove the emergency clause and pass as a non-emergency and take effect after 30 days.
Okay, so on its next presentation, yeah, at its next presentation, this should be considered then not an emergency item, so we can have 4 affirmative votes that will pass this.
Correct.
Mr. President.
Accurate?
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
And Mr. Horniak and all council, we hope that we are able to achieve this by the administrative task and avoid that, which we believe there's a strong possibility for that. Just in decline.
Yeah.
Yes.
We do.
Is it possible that the council can give or create an ordinance for a one-time administrative permission, if you will, to execute this on behalf of the
No.
city? It can't be done that way.
That, we would have to declare it as an emergency, just like Mr. Mazur said, like when we go off and there's an emergency water line break or something that's in detriment to the city, Mr. Roman can go and execute that, and then we can come back and pay it. We believe we might be in that similar situation.
Okay, so the opportunity is that in that clause of emergency action, we can utilize it that way, but we'd still have to pass an ordinance later on with 4 votes as a non-emergency. Okay.
Yes.
Fair enough, thank you.
And Mr. President, one last item. There's a possibility that we could use another organization to step in and fill that role. Say the OEDF, for instance, and maybe rewrite the agreement. So that's a discussion that we'll have to have at another time. But hopefully, if we can get 4 at the next meeting, we may not have this issue, but that's an option too. So it's just something, these are things that we're looking into to get us through this. So we'll just request that this be pulled for now, and then we'll research the other 2 options and see what works best.
Thank you, Mr. Majors. Council, any other questions?
Mr. President, I have one follow-up question.
Yeah, Mr. Horniak.
At what time frame do we jeopardize losing the grant?
Mr. President, Mr. Horniak, the due date to get the work done is June, so end of June, and we're in March, and the contractor's tapping his foot right now, waiting for this to pass.
And do they have a scheduled start date pending the outcome of this, assuming it's affirmative?
That's a tough one because of timing, right? They have scheduled, they have other work too that they do. This isn't
Right.
the only job, so I don't have a good answer for that without knowing from the contractor.
Very good, thank you.
We're kind of tiptoeing through the tulips right
Mr.
now.
President?
Just one, yes, yes, Mrs. Ackerman.
I'm just asking, if, like, Steve and I were to quit, I mean, Kathy, is that something, would it have to be for a certain amount of time? Yeah, don't get your hopes up, I'm talking about the Historical Society. So, would it have to be, or would it have to be with enough time passing or something like that? Because I just have a family membership, where I don't have like that vested thing that Kathy has, as being an officer, prior officer or whatever. Does that make it
Mr. President,
possible?
Mrs. Paula.
So I sat on as a board member.
Right.
And as a board member or trustee, the last meeting that I went to is when we discussed this, so that's why I'm recusing myself. We've had other council members as members of the Historical Society. Jim Seaman was one of them. He was a huge advocate for the Historical Society, and he voted. But I don't know how that's changed. 2 years ago, when I talked to the Ethics Commission, they said, as long as you're on the board, you cannot vote because there's 2 votes. I could vote with them or vote here, so I never voted either way because I had that conflict. Clint Wasserman was a board member. When he was on council, he was a trustee for the Historical Society. So it has been done in the past, but if you're a member, I voted in my council seat when I was just a member, I voted for the Historical Society. So whatever you choose to do for your own ethics, that's up to you. I voted when I was a member, but that was like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, I'm just asking if it would expedite it. I mean, I can make it, you know,
Withdraw.
if that would be the bigger picture and help, I can rescind our family membership. It's not, you know, certainly not at that level of like being a board member. So like, is
Mr.
that
President?
possible?
Yeah,
I know
Mr. Mayor.
Melissa's not here.
Just a
Where are
second.
you?
Yeah, she
I,
did just.
Mr. Mayor.
I did inquire with Melissa about that because it was a judgment call as the social member, so to speak, as you two are, and if you were to withdraw. And it was a little unclear, but I think she could check. I think you could do that from what she was saying. And it was when your application went in, it was earlier than you really realized. So I still think you can, but we'll check that also. That would be, that'd be
helps.
admirable thing to do.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
that's small potatoes next to what you guys are trying to accomplish, we're all trying to accomplish, so.
Yeah,
that's
so
fair.
more withdraw from the thing and you'd be serving the Historical Society better with the withdrawal than with the within. And we'll certainly check that also.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Major, so the request would be to seek a motion to send it back to the administration?
That would be correct.
Thank you. If there aren't any questions from council, could I please seek a motion to send item 48 of 2025 back to the administration?
Mr. President.
Mr. Wallenczak.
Mr. President, I make a motion to remove and send back item number 48 of 2025 to the administration.
Thank you, Mr. Wallenczak. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Horniak. Council, any objections? Hearing none?
I was gonna say, I think we have enough people to do that.
Right, right. We'll send
That's
item
close.
48 is back to you, the administration. The next item on the agenda for consideration is passage is item 56 of 2025, presented by the mayor and our city administrator. We'll go right to the city administrator. Mr. Major.
Thank you, Mr. President. So what this ordinance would do would allow us to amend the agreement between the city and Capacity LLC. As you know, that is the company that was created for the data center site. The issue is that in order for them to be able to complete the Alta survey, they needed some title work completed, and when we were trying to get ownership of the Gratz property, there was a delay in getting the title work completed because there was, I think I mentioned this last time, there was a death certificate that we had to obtain from the state of Virginia to clear up some of the title work. That was a complete unknown to us, and it took every bit of 6 weeks to obtain that, and then they could finish the title work. And then, so that put a delay on getting the title commitment portion of the agreement, meeting that timeline. So They requested that we extend it and just kind of do this formally, so you'll see the amendment in there. It is to extend that section of the agreement, and that's the reason why. So they're trying to complete the Alta survey right now, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Major. Council? Hearing none, I will assign item 56 of 2025 as ordinance 56 of 2025 and ask Ms. Rawson to please read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor and finance director to amend the sales and purchase agreement with Capacity LLC, a Florida limited liability company, and Oregon on the Bay Regional Economic Development Foundation, an Ohio nonprofit corporation foundation, for the purpose of extending the time period for completion of title work to allow an Alta survey to be completed and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Rawson. Council?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Horniak.
I move for passage of ordinance 56 of 2025 as an emergency measure.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak. Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Pauloff. We have a motion by Mr. Horniak, second by Ms. Pauloff. Council, any objections? Hearing none, Ms. Rawson, would you please take a roll call vote of council?
Mr. Horniak.
Yes.
Mrs. Pauloff.
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman.
Yes.
Mr. Reeves.
Yes.
Mr. Slander.
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack.
Yes.
Thank you. Ordinance 56 of 2025 does pass with a vote of 6 yeas, 0 nays. The next item on the agenda for consideration and passage is item number 60 of 2025, presented by the mayor, Mrs. Papara, our law director, and city administrator, Joe Major. Go to Joe. Mr. Major.
Thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance would allow us to enter into an agreement. As you know, we are members of the Northwest Ohio Aggregation Coalition. Several communities, we combined our buying power to get energy for our residents at a cheaper price. And what they do is they enter into energy contracts with companies that bid on the on serving the communities with cheaper energy. And they go through a bid process. This contract would be with Dynegy Energy Services. It would be for 1 year, and it is a cheaper rate than what First Energy offers. So this was competitively bid. This is the price. And this is, for us, we have to formally accept that. So I'll take any questions.
Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Horniak.
just because this always seems to create all kinds of things in our community, so just to clarify at the front side, by the city entering into this agreement with them, the residents of the city don't have to do anything in order to execute their services being provided by this organization as opposed to First Energy. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
So just to clarify and put on the record, so those people that come knocking at a resident's doors are not part of this program. This is the city kind of chosen and recommended service provider for electric services. It is not the people who are knocking door to door trying to get people to change on their doorstep.
Mr. President?
Yes,
Mr.
Mr.
Horniak, yes, you are
Major.
correct. That is, I'm so glad you brought that up because that's been a frequent phone call that we receive, is that people get knocks on the door, or they bump into somebody at Walmart asking about their energy and who their provider is, and they sign contracts with them. And every single time that we've seen, at least that I've seen since I've been here, that it's never a better deal for the customer. It's always better to stay with this program. It's never been cheaper anywhere else. This is a better rate than what First Energy provides. But, you know, we actually get phone calls to try to help people get out of those contracts, actually. And it's more frequent than you think, believe it or not. Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. And yeah, that's correct, that the people knocking on and soliciting energy services from elsewhere is not part of this program. The people here don't have to do anything, and they'll be enrolled in it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to put that on record, that this is the city's official program, if you will, and nothing has to be done by any individual resident to take advantage of this.
Yep.
So,
Thank you, Mr.
Major.
Horn.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Major, I do have, I don't know how to ask this other than, what if someone had 5, 6 years ago went on their own? Can they get back into the cities, and how do they, the aggregate, and how do they go about doing that?
Mr. President,
Mr. Mayor?
we have that happen often. And whether it's 5, 6 years ago, or if they choose to enter in, because these people come to your door, or they meet up with you at one of the stores, and they offer a really nice-looking introductory rate. And sometimes they give like $100 Visa gift card, but you traditionally pay dearly. As the months go on, when the rates go up, you pay quite a bit for that $100 gift card. So they call the office, whether it's Sandy Garverick, Kelly, or Cassie, and they know the procedure, and will walk them through how to opt back into our program. So we assist anybody who calls through when they call the city.
Thank you. There is no cost to that for the citizen either.
Sometimes there is, not our service, but sometimes it costs them so much to get out of the arrangement they got into.
That they have now.
And we help them through that too.
Okay, thank you. Council, any further questions? Hearing none, I will assign item 60 of 2025 as ordinance 60 of 2025, and ask Ms. Rawson to please read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor and director of finance to enter into a customer supply agreement with Dynergy for the provision of electric energy to residential and small commercial customers within the city of Oregon and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Rawson. Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Horniak.
I move for passage of ordinance 60 of 2025 as an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak.
Second.
Whichever.
Second by Ms. Pauloff. We have a motion by Mr. Horniak, second by Ms. Pauloff. Council, is there any objections? Hearing none, Ms. Rawson, will you please take a roll call vote of council?
Mr. Horniak.
Yes.
Mrs. Paula.
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman.
Yes.
Mr. Reeves.
Yes.
Mr. Slander.
Yes.
Mr. Wolenczak.
Yes.
Thank you. Ordinance 60 of 2025 does pass with a vote of 6 yeas, 0 nays. The next item on the agenda for consideration and passage is item number 61 of 2025, presented by the mayor, our law director, Ms. Purpura, and city administrator, Mr. Joel Major. We'll go right to Mr. Major.
Thank you, Mr. President. And as I failed to mention in the previous legislation consideration, that NOAC has employed Palmer Energy to manage the energy accounts. So what this ordinance would do is would allow us, the city, to enter into a contract. Although we don't have we have the RFP preliminary pricing in your packets, but how this works is that Palmer Energy goes out to for a competitive bid, and it's actually called referred to as a reverse energy auction. And what they do is they bid against each other, all the energy companies, for lower pricing, and who wants to win the account. We have 44 accounts. So this is just for the City of Oregon facilities. We have 44 accounts, you know, it could be for a range of a term of 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, and they give a range of pricing for each length of time. But what this would do is allow us to enter into the contract right away, because the energy companies, when they give the pricing, they need to, they require that customer to enter into a contract right away and not wait, you know, 2 weeks or 3 reads or whatever it is that a municipality would require for passage. They require that it be signed right away, which is, we've done this before in this method. I know that the city of Toledo does the same thing when they do their pricing. This is common. So I know that was a lot, but with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Hearing none, I will assign item 61 of 2025 as ordinance 61 of 2025 and ask Ms. Rawson to please read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor and director of finance to enter into a customer supply agreement for the provision of electric energy to the City of Oregon facilities and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Rawson. Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Horniak.
I move for passage of ordinance 61 of 2025 as an emergency measure.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak.
Second?
Second by Ms. Pauloff. Thank you, Ms. Pauloff. We have a motion by Mr. Horniak, second by Ms. Pauloff. Council, any objections? Hearing none, Ms. Rawson, would you please take a roll call vote of council?
Mr. Horniak.
Yes.
Mrs. Paula.
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman.
Yes.
Mr. Reeves.
Yes.
Mr. Slander.
Yes.
Mr. Wollenzak.
Yes.
Thank you. Ordinance 61 of 2025 does pass with a vote of 6 yeas, 0 nays. Anything further for the special meeting? Okay. If there is no further business before council for the special meeting, I will seek a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President,
Mrs. Pauloff?
so moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Pauloff.
Second.
Second by Mr. Salinger, thank you. Council, any objections?